This is Pam Electric Ghost doing live on the air with Miriam Schulman, artist, author, and art biz coach. And I want to welcome you to the Pam Electric Ghost podcast. How are you doing tonight?
Hey, how is everybody?
Well, thank you for being here. We do have your website on the screen, schulmanart.com/believe. That'll be fully clickable for anyone who wants to click on that later, where we're on almost all the public podcasts where you can listen or watch our show. Right now, we're live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. And we do have a couple of questions we ask any guest before we start getting into the heart of the story. We always ask any guest on the show, what motivates you and why do you do what you do?
Oh, great question. And what a beautiful place to start. So right now, my primary motivator is creating legacy. That is something that a lot of people go through once they hit the age of 50. I'm 55, by the way. And so when I reached my 50s, it became increasingly important that my impact that I created, my contribution needed to be in a form where I was creating something of a legacy that was beyond myself that I could pass down.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm 56 myself, so I'm in that range.
And do you agree with me? Do you feel that like creating your legacy is becoming more important in this decade?
Yeah, well, I'm a creative person. I'm a musician, podcaster, artist. But I have a day job. I'm a developer, software developer. But I've always, since I was 17, I always felt the need to still keep my hat in the musical area of creativity. So I never stopped playing. I met a lot of guys when I was 17, 18. By the time they were 24, they hung up their guitar. They just stopped. And I had this kind of childlike innocence when it came to that. I kept on going, regardless of whether I made money or not. I just did it because I love it. So I think sometimes you want to make your mark because not that you want to be a starving artist, but it's like I just love writing music and I love playing it. So I think you find something you love, and whether or not the world gives you the accolades for it, you still do it because you love it. And then eventually it's like law of attraction, people come to you.
Yeah, it's easy to be an artist. It's easy to be an artist when you're young. It's a lot harder to stick with it when you're older. I think Picasso said that once.
Yeah, it's hard because we kind of get told that, like, oh, that's silly. It's immature. it's not paying a bill, so like you gotta drop it. So like what's the kind of advice you give to people when you want, a lot of people talk about believing in yourself, and how do you go about doing that when a lot of people have like imposter syndrome, or they don't feel it's valid to like believe in themselves.
Okay, so if you have imposter syndrome, congratulations, you're human. And the bigger you get, the more the imposter syndrome is going to show up. So my journey with imposter syndrome myself is I had no problem believing in the fact that I would get an agent to publish the book. And for some naive reason, I completely believed someone was going to publish my book. And both things happened, probably because I had that belief. I didn't know it was supposed to be hard. So I just kept going after it. But the minute I signed the book contract, I thought, wait, they made a huge mistake. I don't know how to write a book. I should give my money back. So I went through all those same things. And really what this is that whenever we're doing something that makes us feel uncomfortable, whether it's writing a book, whether it's composing music, whether it's building a business, whether it's creating a podcast, whatever it happens to be, when you're trying to create something big in the world, we have not been designed as humans, we have not evolved for goal achievement. We've evolved for survival. And our brain thinks it's its job to keep us safe in the world. So whenever we feel like we're doing something that feels a little different and a little uncomfortable, our brain's like going, danger, 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 danger. So we're going to feel fear. This is weird. This is uncomfortable. We're going to feel fear. What's going to happen? Our fear-based brain is going to come up with all kinds of reasons why this is a terrible idea. And the smarter you are and the more creative you are, the better you're going to be at coming up with those stories about why it's a bad idea. Now, some of those stories may sound something like this. You can't do that. What makes you think you can do this? But other stories could be like, it's not a good time to start a business. It's an election cycle. It's not a good time to fill in the blank, launch a podcast. There's a pandemic going on. So these things, they sound real to us. They don't feel like excuses because they're very convincing stories. But they are stories. So our fear comes up. I don't call them excuses. They feel real. They come up with these doubts about why this thing is a bad idea, which is going to lead to procrastination and not taking steps that you need to do to realize your dreams, which is going to eventually lead to feeling guilt or shame because you didn't take the steps you wanted to reach your goals. But this is just because of the way that we're built as humans. We're built for survival, not goal achievement. So we have to work really hard to overcome that primitive brain that wants us in the cave and safe.
Yeah, it's safe to be, keep the wolf from being at the door. But the wolf or the saber-toothed tiger is like, it's not that anymore. So it's these like things or ideas that are just as scary as the physical wolf, because it's keeping you like that's actually putting you in danger at the level of the wolf at the door.
Yeah.
mind,
So
right?
we're always thinking about like the dangers of like you said, leaving the cave, the wolf, the tiger, whatever it is out there. But there's also danger in staying the same. There's also danger in playing small. There's also danger in staying in that cave. Because guess what? There are snakes in the cave with you. So if you don't grow and evolve, you still can get bitten by a snake. So you might, if there's going to be danger either way, what's going to be more fun? Going after those dreams? Yeah, it'll be uncomfortable. But as long as you believe that the risk, that success is worth the risk you're going to take, that's what life's all about.
Yeah, you have to learn to tread water. Sometimes what I find is as a creative person, like just being in your comfort zone isn't really the key. Like if you're an artist, it's like you tend to push beyond like phoning it in, because like once you get to like a certain level of like, okay, I mastered this, you tend to want to push it into something where you didn't master it, because it's going to be more challenging. There's like Bowie made a statement saying that he continually wanted to go into treading water as an artist, going into areas that he wasn't the best at.
Yeah.
To push his art. That he felt that if he tread water in that kind of way, that he would actually become a better musician by giving himself those challenges, which you can see in his career. He did kind of shape shift all over the place. But like in trying to build like a brand or like a service, you've got to have something that's going to be more stable. But I guess it's a challenge just to get it out the door. So maybe you can talk about when people are trying to build like their own secret sauce or their specialty, like how do they frame that?
Okay, well, I love that you brought up David Bowie as an example. because what a lot of people do, we talked already about playing safe, and in the context we were using it is not taking risk and going in order to go after the dreams. But some people, in order to stay safe, what they want to do is they look at what's most successful or what most popular, or they use AI to help them. And what they're doing is looking at what's most predictable. However, that's not a formula for success, because if you look at what's most popular now and you're just trying to get into that, you're basically shooting for mediocrity and shooting for boring. And it does not matter what we're talking about: music, art, anything creative, any kind of business, fashion. It doesn't matter what you're talking about. If you're shooting for that, you're boring. Boring doesn't sell. People are looking for what's new and different.
Gotta be a little weird.
Rich people don't want boring. You gotta be a little bit weird. Yes, you do. Thank you. Preach it.
Well, you had to embrace that kind of inner weirdo, like you said. When I was reading your comments there, questions you like to answer. But what I found is, like, anybody who's really like cutting edge, they embrace their vulnerability. They embrace their kind of secret sauce that is their individuality, what makes them different. Like, everybody kind of builds up on their influences. Like, you are your influences. You are what you've read and what you've heard, but it's how you interpreted that and how you go about it with your kind of aesthetic, right? That's your secret, is how you process that, and it becomes like your aesthetic.
That's right. So it's fine to have influences. We all start out, whatever you do, whether you're musician, artist, creative person, business person, we all start out, we're following a guru, we're kind of doing what they do, but eventually we got to branch off and do something different. So you could take a lot of different influences, but as long as you just sprinkle a little bit from here and there and you create your own point of view, that's what's going to matter. So we talked about the word weird. You have to be a little bit weird. Now, the word weird actually didn't always have a negative connotation. So hundreds of years ago, the word weird actually meant your fate or your destiny. It meant that it was something magical. But what happened is, as the supernatural became vilified, the word weird also took on a negative connotation. But really, at its core, the word weird is to embrace what's magical about you, what your fate and what your destiny is.
Yeah, I've always been into the strange and what we call weird, and I always thought it was a cool thing, just to kind of not be in the moment what's popular. So I was like, in college, I was running the college radio, wanting to hear the bands that were like the underground bands, not the stuff that's in the top 20, but the guys on the bottom 500, and kind of pushing the indie bands and all the then eventually some of that stuff became like, grunge, and became, Nirvana, Sub Pop. That some of it became popular. REM.
Yeah.
I mean, I was into REM and when nobody cared about them, and then they became super big. But I was like one of these kids that thought they were cool, and were playing them on the college radio because we liked the fact that you couldn't hear what Michael Stipe was saying, or you didn't really understand what he was saying, but it seemed kind of magical. They had this thing. It didn't sound like anybody else. And it was like, wow, why can't we have more of that? Why can't we have somebody trying to do something that's not typical?
Yeah, that's awesome. A lot of times people ask me, because I like to say anyone can make a living from their art. And the biggest pushback I get from that is, well, wait, what about talent? And I'm not going to say talent doesn't matter at all, But we all know, just like you just said, we all know people who are like at the top 20, and we're like, really? You know, like scratching our heads like, why is that so popular? And then we all know things that are no one's ever heard of, and but wait, that's really good. Right? Yeah. And what makes the difference between somebody who everybody knows and these unknown? It's not talent.
Yeah. Sometimes it's destructive. But it's the
it's
structure.
It's marketing.
It's the marketing. So if you can figure out marketing, you don't necessarily have to have the best product, or
Yeah.
you know, it could just the way that you can get into the market. Cause I remember being a kid and they were selling pet rocks. And I'm like, why are people buying rocks? But it was like, it was all over the supermarkets and the JC Penney's and the Sears, and we'd see these pet rocks, and people are like, oh, I gotta get that pet rock. It's like they're selling you a rock.
Right. Or the sea monkeys.
Yeah.
Like the chia pets.
You need that? I had the sea monkeys and a rock. So I mean, it's like how you don't have to have some great product. It's like you have to have the drive.
Well, you do have a great product. You do have to have a good product, but a good product is not going to sell itself. That's the sad part. And a lot of people just want to, especially creative, they just want to make what they want. They just want to make their cool stuff. I get it. I like to make cool stuff too. But unfortunately, you do have to market it. So one of the best ways to market is using publicity. This is something that has been, I mean, that's why I'm talking to you right now. This is how we talk about my book, Artpreneur. But this is something that has been used for hundreds of years by artists. One of the stories I like to share, which in the visual art world, is Rubens, and he was an artist, a Dutch artist, and he knew that there would be political unrest. He wouldn't be able to get his paintings out of Europe. So what he did was he made etchings of his art and he distributed it. So etchings are basically a very expensive poster, but basically he's creating flyers. He's creating publicity of his art, and he had that distributed to the wealthiest families across Europe and the royal families across Europe. And that's how he was able to get so many commissions and grow his art career. So publicity is something that is available to all of us, no matter what your industry is. Earned publicity is free. We're not talking about paid publicity. That's something different. But free publicity is something that everybody can do. And it's a great way to grow your brand and find your people.
What are like maybe the top 5 ways of getting like that type of publicity done with it? You know, feeling that you're like, if somebody doesn't know, who's like, well, how do I do that? Like, are there maybe 5 examples you can give, or a core example is like the best way to do that?
So you know your listeners really well. Like, give me an example of what their typical career is that they want to be publicizing.
Well, most of the people who watch the show are creative type people.
Perfect.
Like authors or artists, that type of person.
Okay. So
painters, actors, those.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. Okay. All right. So the biggest mistake that I see creatives making is we all have in our soul, we all have a creative side to our soul, which cares about our creative side cares about what and how. And as creative people, we spend the most time there. It's the what of our art, the how of our art. However, we have this other side of our soul. This is the sacred side of the soul. The sacred side cares about who and why. Now, in order to get publicity, what you need to talk about is not your why, but the why should people care about you. So what you have to do is match what you do to other people's who is interested in what you do and why are they interested in what you do and what stories do you have around that. So the biggest mistake I see people do when they try to do publicity is say, hey, I'm an artist, I have art for sale, and they go to the press and say, well, would you like to write about me? And the press is like, no, thank you. That's just advertising what you do. That's not the same thing. So what is the story that you have to tell that their audience is interested in? So for example, I have a client, Grace Marquez. She does beautiful underwater art. She's a diver. She takes pictures when she dives, and then she does abstract paintings of her art. So in order to publicize her work, she's been approaching diver magazines, travel magazines. Those are the people who would be interested in showing the type of art that she creates. So it's not just about her, it's about what she's creating, who's interested in that, and why.
Yeah, that's an interesting approach, because I think a lot of people, maybe there's too much in their head, which a typical artist, they're like, they're just into what their project is, they're into like who they are, without connecting. Like, I've got to get ahead of my audience. I got to understand what they like. But like a marketer,
Right.
That's what they do. They understand, like, oh, who's the buyer, who's gonna want this service, who's gonna be interested in this story. And really, like you said, it's like telling that story. Like, if you can connect emotionally and kind of viscerally through people, like, you can tell a story that can pull the heartstrings or pull like some kind of attention string. Sometimes they say, anything that can draw attention. It's like, so maybe that's a comment. It's like sometimes the people say, oh, there's no bad publicity. Do you believe in that?
There really isn't bad publicity, so that's true. But there is such a thing as boring, and boring is not going to get you publicity. So you can't get publicity saying, I love to paint. Like, why do you paint? Well, I love it. That's not enough for them. But if you have something that other people care about, so I encourage my artists to talk about their love for the planet. If they're doing landscape, is it because you care about sustainability? Is it because you care about ecology? So I have different abstract artists who are all, let's say, painting landscapes, and there could be like 4 different stories. It's not all the same story. Oh, I like to paint abstract art. That's boring. So one of them cares about sustainability. Another cares about creating something beautiful out of the chaos that we're experiencing now. And a third cares about connecting to the divine, connecting with God. So those are 3 very different reasons for art collectors to be interested in what they do. And so if you're a musician or an artist, you have to understand, why should your audience care about this? That's what it is that your story is.
Yeah, if you can connect to, movement or concept, I think a lot of people connected, to you too, because Bono was like into all these causes, so they saw that he was like actually living what he believed in, right? So there's Eddie Vedder. Eddie Vedder had this thing with Pearl Jam in a day where he's like, Pearl Jam fans felt that he was connected to the scene. It wasn't just about him being a rock star. It's because he felt like he had
That's
issues.
right.
Like,
it wasn't just
Ticketmaster. He made it a big deal.
Right. It wasn't just write a story about me because we're having a concert. It was, I'm donating 20% or whatever it was. I'm donating this much to this cause. Let's talk about this cause. So the stories becomes about the cause, but it gives him publicity. So I'm not saying he's doing it for that reason. I'm not trying to say that, but that's not a bad idea. It's not a bad thing. So I actually do encourage my artists to team up with philanthropic causes for that reason, that you do give people an additional reason to invest in what you're doing when they know that it's helping something besides just the pleasure that they're getting from what you're doing for them. So you're giving them a reason too.
Yeah, I think it's important to also understand, like what are the ways to connect to those audiences, like with the most maybe like the idea of like certain phrases that you use in marketing, and maybe we could talk about like, well, how do you
Sure.
phrase these words in the right way to connect? Because like you could want to get people to be part of this cause or do this philanthropic effort, but maybe you don't know how to actually voice that. You don't know how to say that. And I think like it's important to know like the actual strategy or structure of like what's the most effective way to phrase things.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do give a list of power words inside my book Artpreneur. Let me see if I can. There it is. Reach back for it. So that is definitely something that is inside the book that is very helpful. In the selling chapter, we talk about power words and phrases. So there's a whole chart of these are the phrases you should use, and here's why. Here is why it will help you connect with them. And so let me just give you, the people watching today, a great example. So, for example, we talk you the word using the word you. All right. So instead of saying I help artists learn how to make more money so that they have the time and freedom to do what they love. I could say that. Contrast this with I help you make more money so that you have the time and freedom to do what you love. So using the word YOU, did you see how much more powerful that one sentence was? So
Yeah, I
your
think it
marketing
connects to people.
copy, yeah, your marketing copy should always be about them, but in addition, you should talk directly to them. So I
You
could
need to talk directly to your audience.
talk directly to them in your marketing copy. Whether you're on Instagram, whether it's on your website, you're always talking to your ideal client, your ideal customer, your ideal audience, whatever that word is. You're always talking directly to them.
Now, with all the different types of social media, you have TikTok, you have Reels. Is it more effective to do a short 30-second, 90-second reel? Or is it more effective to do like a podcast interview for like
Oh
30
my
minutes to an
goodness.
hour?
Okay. These are all great questions. Video marketing is definitely more effective than social media. So I have a graph that I share with people. It's not inside the book, but I can walk you through it right now. So just imagine that we're talking about the different kinds of, so by advertising, I'm talking about the kinds of advertising that we have control of. All those things you said. But if you say, what is the lowest return on your investment? Investment being your time doing it, your cost on the tools, or you're paying somebody to place an ad, whatever it happens to be. So the lowest down here, lowest return on the investment is TV. That shouldn't be a surprise to you. It's very expensive to take out a Super Bowl ad and not very effective. Okay. The next thing is radio. That should not be surprising to you. That's number 2 on the bottom. Okay. You know what it's up after that? Social media. Social media is in the bottom 3. Yeah. Yeah. Then I forget exactly what comes next, but video marketing is better. What we're talking, this long form stuff is better. The thing after that is affiliate marketing, which if people think that that doesn't apply to them, if you are a visual artist and you work with a gallery, that's your affiliate. Anybody who's basically marketing for you and taking a cut, whether it's an agent, that's your affiliate. That's basically what that is in your world. And the most effective thing is email marketing. Sending an email to let people know I have a concert tonight is way more effective than posting something on Instagram or YouTube or a podcast or television or anything else saying, I have a concert tonight. So building that email list of who your fans are and sending an email out, letting them know is the hands down the number one way to promote to your audience. But to answer your question more specifically, yes, long form video marketing is more effective than social media.
Yeah, I've been finding out that, well, I'm a podcaster, so I'm kind of living that world. But a lot of people told me, it's like, oh, you should go for like the 15-minute podcast, 10-minute podcast.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't really matter, but I've always been in the long form area, and I've seen it work for me in terms of opportunities. Builds up my Rolodex of people that I can connect with. So you never there's a lot of things that happen that you wouldn't even realize just because you show up or your show shows up, then people come after you. I mean, I get agents, pushing authors to want to come on the show, and because they seen my show, so they come to me, and I didn't even go to them. It's like because it just starts bringing it like a lead magnet. It starts creating all these lead opportunities that just keep on coming in, and so I keep on able to book out just because I have like this process established, or this thing that I done on a regular schedule. So if you do something and you're continually showing up in your space, does that give you marketing opportunities because you're predictable? Or does that become too predictable?
No, 1000%. There's two things that happen there. Number one, when you're committed to showing up and doing what you say you're going to do week after week after week, that builds confidence. It builds confidence in yourself, because that's in the very definition of confidence, by the way, is trust. It builds confidence in yourself because you're doing what you say you're going to do. And it builds confidence in your audience. They know they can depend on you. So those two things it's beautiful for building really raving fans who care about what you do, who know they can depend on you to show up. And yes, it does bring in opportunities. I don't know that I would have been given the opportunity to publish this book if I didn't have a podcast. I was able to prove to my publisher that I do what I say I'm going to do. Yeah, I did have lots of imposter syndrome that we talked about earlier, but I still did it. I did it in spite of that, freak out. I freaked out, but I did it anyway. So that kind of commitment is very important.
Yeah, my grandpa always said showing up's half the thing. Half the task.
It is.
Show up, that's like you got it half done. But there's this concept in Artpreneur of you call marketing diseases, and maybe you can kind of explain to us what they are. I think you mentioned Sleeping Beauty Complex, Rapunzel's type documenting style marketing, and Painted Rock problems. Maybe you can kind of.
Okay. Yeah. Most of the diseases are named after Disney princesses. So the Sleeping Beauty Complex is the whole idea that if you're a band or you're an artist or a podcast or whatever it is, whatever you're whatever it is that you're building, it's not ready yet. I can't bring it out in the world yet.
Yeah.
So that feeling is that you don't want to bring it out until it's an adult. And the thing is, you have to love your baby now, because I'm sure that your podcasting and your video making here is a lot different now than when you first started. Am I right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I started 2016. It was just on a phone. There's, it wasn't video. So you get better. You get capability. So like if you go back, at the beginning, I've run into podcasters. So I am not ready because I don't have the camera and I don't have this. And it's like when I started, I just did it on a cell phone.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter. You have to just start, right? I always tell people, because you know what? It's like an athlete learning to do a 3-point shot. Were you making that shot at the beginning of practice? You weren't. Like you get better over time. You got to do it to get
Yeah.
through it.
So the reason I call it Sleeping Beauty Complex is because in the Disney movie, there's this little baby and oh my gosh, we don't want her to prick her finger. So they put her into the forest. The fairies bring her in the forest. And the next thing we know, we see her. She's a beautiful grown up princess. We don't see the braces. We don't see the awkward stage. And this is what a lot of us do with our businesses. We want to keep it to ourselves until it's a fully grown adult. But you can't grow in that. You need that feedback. Feedback is what's going to help you evolve. It's going to help you figure out what your audience is looking for. It's going to help you figure out what's weird about you, what's special. It's going to help you grow as an artist, as a business person, as a podcaster, as a creative, is having feedback. So that's what Sleeping Beauty Complex says. The other one you mentioned was Rapunzel style marketing. So Rapunzel is the princess that was up in the tower. And she just waited for people to come to her. That's not a good way to grow a business or a creative career, because you have to make your own opportunities. You have to be willing to get out there. You have to be willing to be vulnerable. The fish are not going to jump in the boat. And no matter how great you are, you can't just be Rapunzel up in that tower. So that's what Rapunzel style marketing is. The last one that you mentioned was the painted rock problem. So I get emails that go something like this. Hey, Miriam, I'm having a really tough time marketing or I have a really tough time selling because I paint rocks and I paint on rocks, and a lot of people don't consider that real art. And I'm like, and you need help from me? Why? You just answered your own question. There's something about your product that's wrong. So you can't make a business out of something that people don't want. And I know we all think real art is creating what we want in our souls, but real artists also do what people want. Like Michelangelo wanted to be a sculptor, but when the Pope said, please paint the Sistine Chapel because I will pay you lots of money, he didn't say that's not real art because I want to be a sculptor. He was like, okay, show me the scaffolding. I'll climb up there. He did it. So
Yeah, it's the hard thing. It's like
yeah,
a
and
starving artist kind of syndrome.
nobody looks at that ceiling and said, well, that's not real art. He didn't do what he wanted to do. So sometimes we have to do what our audience wants. That's part of the art, is creating what your audience wants.
Yeah, because sometimes if you're a musician, and as soon as you get a hit, then you start feeling guilty. If you're in that kind of starving artist mentality, then it's like, oh, I'm not. I want it to be like Lou Reed and the Velvets. I want it to be like 1966, and only the critics love me, and nobody really. The fans don't love me, but the critics love me. It's like, well, Lou didn't really want to stay there. Lou Reed was that guy, but he didn't want to stay in that zone. That's why he was hanging out with Bowie. And he did Walk on the Wild Side. That's why he broke out and became more he wasn't there, anymore.
Yeah. And if you find yourself sabotaging your own success, it's exactly what we talked about earlier. If you feel uncomfortable with success, your brain's going to go fear, fear, danger, danger. And it's going to come up with all kinds of reasons why this success is a terrible idea. And it will even give you actions to sabotage your own success because it wants to put you back in that cave and be safe. If you don't feel safe with your own success, that's why you sabotage yourself. Your brain wants to keep you safe.
Mm-hmm. And the danger of being successful is like the unknown of actually, you know, satisfying your dream. Because then, like, what happens when you get there? Like, you're not ready to be there. You gotta prepare yourself to be, ready for success. Because a lot of times, there's a whole kind of mythology of the failure. They like,
Yeah.
oh,
So you have to spend time imagining your own success and getting comfortable with that. And your brain can't actually tell the difference between something that you imagine and something that's really happening. So if you can imagine being successful and get comfortable with that as your future, then you just have to catch up to that future self who already has that success.
yeah, if you can like self-actualize, like you can imagine, right? And I always bring up Bowie with the whole idea, like he started as David Jones, looked like kind of like a Beatle type of guy with the suit and tie. That didn't work. And then he kind of looked into himself and said, what if I bring these theatrics and this kind of sci-fi thing in and create this guy? I create Ziggy Stardust. I kind of buy into that. And I imagine that he's this like mega star. It was a whole story, but he became that story. He
Yes.
actually became that rock star. It was an imaginary
Yes.
story. He actually became it. He totally self-actually I think he had the power to dream it. He
Yes.
wrote it down. He got the idea, and he did it.
He made it real by choosing to believe that that was his destiny. And that is what chapter 1 of my book Artpreneur is about. It's really about choosing to believe in that future you. So that is what my freebie is for everyone listening and watching today. Is you can get chapter 1 of my book for free. It's you can go to schulmanart.com/believe. We have that linked right here.
Yep.
Thing. Okay. And you can get chapter 1 for free. And that's a great place to start.
That's awesome. Well, I do thank you for providing that to our listeners and watchers. And that link will be fully clickable everywhere that we're published. So that you'll be able to click through and go right to that. So right now we can't click on it, but you'll be able to click on it like on all the other platforms that we're on. And so that's an awesome thing to provide. But I'm wondering, like, have you done a lot of research around like different? Well, I think the one thing I was looking at, like research on online art classes, and maybe you can talk to that. Like, how does that help people that
Well,
are looking to
yeah.
like push their work?
Yeah. So in 2013, actually it was a little bit earlier, in 2012, I was approached by somebody on Etsy and saying, "Do you teach online?" And I was like, "What's that? What's this online teaching thing?" So once I looked into it, I was like, "Oh, I can do that. I can totally do that." And I've actually made millions of dollars selling art classes online. It's a beautiful thing to be able to teach to people who live all over the world. So I was doing this long before the pandemic. For whatever your creative skills are, there is somebody who wants to learn it. So that is definitely something that you can tap into. And I actually may have another freebie for our listeners around online art classes. I just want to double check my URL. think it's a guide. Hold on. Let me just make sure that this is the right URL. Okay. Yes. So,
private chat.
yeah. So schulmanart.com/guide is it's totally free. It's a guide to help you build your online class in 30 days, help you choose a topic and what format it needs to be. So if you want to get into the world of teaching your music, your art, your writing, whatever your creative passion is, there is somebody who wants to learn it. So that's Schulman. And what is their second freebie? schulmanart.com/guide.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, I tried to do that. So it's the same one, except I'm trying to build it. But yeah, but the idea I noticed that there's a lot of webinars that people can build and online classes and that's just like people building masterclass type ideas. So it's the same kind of concept. But building like ticketed systems or ways to actually make it so people can sign up. So I guess like you'll go through the different mechanisms, and I guess there are established like structures for setting those type of courses up.
Yeah. So
or did you build like your own?
I personally use Kajabi as my online class platform. Is that what you mean? Like, what platform do I use?
Yeah. Different platforms to monetize it, to make it so it's like I don't got to worry about people sending me like PayPal. It's got a structure so that people feel comfortable actually purchasing it.
So I like Kajabi because that is one of the gold standards. I like that platform very much. I used to be on another platform when I first started out about over 10 years ago. And then when that platform wasn't a viable option anymore, because I think they had gone out of business. When I decided to switch, I wanted something that I felt would really give my clients the best experience. And so that's why I went with Kajabi. So there are other alternatives. A lot of them have the same kinds of bells and whistles to them, but Kajabi is the one that I use.
So another thing, because I give you some time because you said at the top of the hour you may have to go, but this idea of charm pricing. I never heard that term before. What does that mean?
Okay. So there's two ways you can price: charm pricing and prestige pricing. So charm pricing is something that you see at Walmart and at Target. It's pricing things like $14.95. And what it's doing, it's called charm pricing because it's pricing something below $15. So in your mind, you think it's $14, but it also does something else. When you say $14 and whatever, 97 cents, you're letting your customer know that every penny matters. You don't want to do that in every industry because you're attracting penny pinchers. The other kind of pricing is called prestige pricing. Now, prestige pricing doesn't necessarily mean that you're charging so much more, but if you're charging $15, 15, period, nothing after the decimal point, that's a rounded number. Now, they've done studies that show that if they price champagne at $39.97 and $40, 40.00, that the $40 price champagne actually sold better. Why is that? It's because the rounded numbers are processed by the emotional side of the brain, whereas the odd number, the non-rounded number, is processed by the logical side of the brain. So when you're selling a luxury product, such as art, which side of the brain do you want your customer using when they are making a purchasing decision? The emotional side or the logical side?
Yeah, definitely. I would be more emotional, but that's me.
You're right. It was not a trick question. You're right. The emotional side of the brain. You also, if you want to charge more for something, you don't want to be attracting penny pinchers. So if you're pricing something $97 or maybe even $197, you're telling them every dollar matters. And those are the types of people you're going to attract.
That's a cool concept. I hadn't thought about that. I hadn't looked into that, but that's really valuable. I mean, everything you said today has been super valuable, and I have appreciated everything that you brought to the table today. And I think it's really interesting, and I think it's like one thing a lot of artists fail to do is think about the marketing, because they spend all the time on the art. They, no matter what type of artist they are, there's just it's so kind of tunnel vision on the art that the other things are kind of an afterthought. And you really have to, think of it like a business, which to a lot of artists is like, oh, I don't want to even think about that as a business, because that's like an afterthought. It's like, oh, that's not. They get bad connotations, but you got to get beyond that, right? Or you're not.
It's safe to think about business. You're not selling out if you think about your business. You're doing your business, you're doing your art a service if you're able to make money from it, because you can spend more time on it if you can make money from doing what you love, having that time and freedom to do what you love because you're making money from it. So it's safe to make money.
We've just we cleared that through now. Now people understand it's safe to make money. So you think remember that.
It's safe to make money.
Thank you for being a guest on the Family Electric Coach podcast. I would want everybody to check out your website with the offers that we've mentioned. And I appreciate the time you took to be there tonight. And thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you so much for having me.